the key competitive advantage right now for us is that we are a phosphate mine, a very special type of phosphate that's only available in Quebec, Canada, in terms of North America. So you can't change that. You can't put that in Tennessee. You can't put that in Texas. It exists only here. So that's our critical key advantages. The phosphate mine, secondary processing, the phosphoric acid has to be done near to the source as well to keep costs low. So those are two industries that have to stay in Canada.
All right, welcome back inside our Proactive newsroom. And joining me now is John Passalacqua. He is the CEO of First Phosphate. And John is joining us from New York City today for a mineral forum on those critical minerals that we've all been talking about for many, many times. And John, that's a conference going on right now in the Canadian Consulate.
Yes, it is indeed.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about what's sort of being said around there, especially obviously with what's happened over the weekend and the impending threat of tariffs by the U.S. government and more specifically President Trump.
Yeah, so basically the conference is a critical minerals conference. It gathers about 10 to 15 of Canada's most advanced critical minerals projects. There's nickel, there's copper, lithium, phosphate, and a couple of others, graphite as well. So we've been invited down to present to investors here in New York. Obviously, it was organized way before the tariffs were even starting to be discussed. It's quite ironic that the day after tariffs are perhaps to be implemented, that we were invited, that we were having a conference. But I've been asked a lot down here by American investors about the tariffs, and they asked me what are the implications, and I think it's just it's going to be very good for Canada's critical mineral sector. It's not going to be good for Canadians, obviously, if they go through, but for the critical mineral sector and for major projects, it's going to be excellent. Why? Because it's going to get, or it already has gotten all the political parties, all the levels of government to wake up and to say, how on earth are we going to create jobs when jobs are going to be lost? So they're all going to be looking to finally start investing large into critical minerals projects and major projects in general, kicking off a lot of infrastructure in order to get the goods to other markets and in order to start job growth. And what I also think is that it could do is it could start to basically create a trend where the major pension funds and the major investment banks in Canada will start to reinvest in Canada once and for all.
A lot of the premiers, after speaking with the Prime Minister last week, have sort of come out with ideas on how to sort of combat this, and a lot of it is fast-tracking projects. And you've talked to me in the past about the red tape that you have to go through in your particular sector, in your particular industry, and that's probably similar for a lot of industries. So is that one of the things that you hope comes out of this? Is a lot of that red tape is sort of cut through and fast tracks a lot more of these type of projects than others?
Yeah, with the threat to Canadian sovereignty, the threat to these tariffs, in Canada having to do something against the job losses, obviously, and also with the new administration in the U.S. trying to fast track projects, Canada has to do it. We already see the political parties and the government, backtracking certain things like capital gains taxes, talking about major infrastructure spends, talking about cutting red tape and fast tracking a lot of projects. So yes, absolutely. In that sense, it bustles everything around, and it really helps us to do what we've always said that we wanted to do in terms of critical minerals projects, and that's to actually get out of the ground. So in a certain sense, it's the one silver lining to all of this. It gets us in Canada realizing that, my gosh, are we ever behind in infrastructure? Boy, do we ever got to get going.
Yeah. John, what does this do for a company like yours that obviously would want to produce and have production here in Canada? You're in Quebec, obviously. We create a number of jobs. You've estimated anywhere to about 3,000 jobs potentially. But having said that, you also have to deal with moving your product into the United States as well. And so it's almost, I don't want to say it's quite a catch-22, but it's pretty close to that. So is that part of the negotiation process, do you think, moving forward?
Well, I think you got to look at it this way. What this does is it gets countries to focus on what are their key competitive advantages. And obviously the key competitive advantage right now for us is that, we are a phosphate mine, a very special type of phosphate that's only available in Quebec, Canada, in terms of North America. So you can't change that. You can't put that in Tennessee. You can't put that in Texas. It exists only here. So that's our critical key advantages. The phosphate mine, secondary processing, the phosphoric acid has to be done near to the source as well to keep costs low. So those are two industries that have to stay in Canada. I do believe that perhaps for our downstream processing, turn that material into iron phosphate and lithium iron phosphate, if the tariffs do go through, yes, if all countries start the tariff, you'll have to have a presence, a manufacturing presence in each country in order to counteract some of those tariffs. But for what is the competitive advantage in the mining, in the first and second transformation, that will continue to have to be done in Canada because of just sheer logistics of the mineral resource being located where it is. God just happened to put it where it is. You can't move that.
Yeah. And lastly, John, does this give Canada an advantage in negotiations with President Trump and the US, and the fact that just what you talked about there are certain industries which are native to Canada, have to be made in Canada, are not going anywhere else, but they will be needed desperately in the United States. So it gives Canada, as they say, one of those trading levers that they'll need to use moving forward.
Well, it does give Canada a trading lever, and it's a lever that we've also had. But now what they're starting to realize in Canada is we can't continuously put more and more red tape and mired projects. We have to get them going. Otherwise, we're not going to have economic activity in here, at which case, we can risk to lose our sovereignty. So yes, Canada has to get going. But more importantly, Canada has to start to invest in its own projects. We have large pension funds. We have, large other economic vehicles in Canada that have been largely investing outside of Canada for a number of years. All of that is going to have to be laser focused back on Canada. So a great day for mining, I believe, a great day for major projects on Saturday. You're going to see a lot of the stuff that was mired that couldn't get going in Canada. Now it's going to have to get going because we realize the economic threats of not getting it going. Pipelines, mines, anything that's major infrastructure. Canada's going to have to get that done. Otherwise, yeah, they'll lose their leverage with the United States. Absolutely.
John, thanks so much. Enjoy the conference. I know you're answering a lot of questions about Canada and what's going on. Do your best for that, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Yes, thank you so much, Steve. Really appreciate it.
All right, there's John Passalacqua, the CEO of First Phosphate, joining us from New York City.